blinking light. After I hit the go button, I realized I probably should have said birthday live stream rather than just birthday live. So you're sharing my birthday live with me if you happen to get on today or during this live. Anyway, today is my birthday, and for those that are curious, I turned 55. So I am eligible to join AARP, as my brother was so happy to point out to me, my 4-year younger brother. So anyway, will I join? Probably not. AARP, if you look into it, is a little bit of a political organization, one that I'm not entirely enamored with. But anyway, yes, so today is my birthday. What are we going to do? Well, um, I don't know if we're going to make it to a church service this morning, but we're probably going to worship as a family together. And then possibly there's a replaying of the second Lord of the Rings movie, which is the Two Towers, which is my favorite of the three, partly because of the Battle of Helm's Deep. Just a excellent, excellent done movie, cinematography, acting. I love so much about that movie, and and then we're just gonna hang out, have time with the family, which I'm definitely looking forward to. We have a lot of late risers, so I'm out early getting a coffee. By the way, kudos to the Ruther Glen Duncan, especially the young lady who I don't know, but they know me because I come regularly. Oftentimes I'm greeted with John's here when I walk in. It's kind of like Norm from Cheers, walking into the Cheers bar, and everybody goes Norm, So I get the John treatment when I go into Dunkin'. Anyway, she was the only one there, and they weren't open because of that. Even though they were supposed to be, and she said, "I'll make you a coffee," and I shared with her that it was my birthday, and gave her a tip because she was so kind as to serve me, even while other very frustrated people were coming by and realizing they were closed, including people like me who put in their orders. So, anyway, kudos to them. They treat me like royalty there. Excuse me. With that said, I put two things on my topic line there. So one is Starlink. So if you're not familiar with Starlink, Starlink is the low level satellite company of Elon Musk that provides internet data. Um, so I don't know what the range is from us to the satellite, but I do understand they're low orbiting satellites, and there's a number of them in the atmosphere. And I know Elon Musk continues to launch them, and they provide internet. And it's a little bit on the pricey side compared to what I had, but astronomically better than what I had. And because I have a job that's dependent upon working from home and having good internet, um, I needed it. And I had T-Mobile Business, and at first, T-Mobile Business was like a huge jump from what I had previously, and then it just crashed in the last month or so. The Our infrastructure, for whatever reason, has just caved under, I'm guessing, increasing demand. We have a massive distribution center. I'm guessing 300,000 square feet. I don't know. It's huge. And anyway, since that's been being built and all the increased construction in the area, where our internet is just diminished drastically, and I suspect it has something to do with it. So anyway, Starlink. If you're out in the boonies and you're reliant on cell rather than landlines, and that just doesn't seem to be cutting it quite, I do recommend it because even though we don't have optimal coverage where we're at because we have some obstructions from trees, um, and it says obstructed, yet we're still getting massively improved upload download speeds, and so that's been encouraging. Um, but I also want to talk about Ashley Babbitt. Who is Ashley Babbitt? and why should you be concerned about her? There was an article on HuffPost I just pulled up and briefly saw, and it was about the January 6th riots in DC. Now, first of all, if you've seen footage of the January 6th riots, you probably have seen what's been redacted on organizations like CNN and NBC, etc. And what you've seen likely is a very small window of rioters who were causing problems and were trying to break down barricades and trying to bust into, excuse me, the congressional Senate chambers or the chambers and causing all sorts of disruption at the Capitol. You saw a very narrow window of maybe less than 100 people out of over the million that were there. And you probably saw some video of people walking around inside the Senate chambers, and of course, famously, the called the QAnon shaman is what he became known as. By the way, really good interview recently with the QAnon shaman with Michael Knowles. Michael Knowles. You might want to check out. I think it was 1 to 2 months ago on the Daily Wire. Michael Knowles, QAnon shaman. I forget the guy's real name. Very well done. The guy does have some interesting beliefs, but he's extremely well spoken. But check him out. But anyway, what images did you have? You had people walking around, including this QAnon shaman, most famous for his massive horned helmet, face paint, bare chest, um, carrying a staff, etc. But you saw them walking around peacefully. And what we've found out since that time is these people were let into the Capitol. But again, you did have people trying to force their way in. In one situation, there's brief footage of this. It shows police barricading a door on one side and then a group of protesters on the other trying to force their way in. And one woman climbing up this pile of people to go through this window and then subsequently getting shot in the neck, falling back and dying shortly thereafter. And that was Ashley Babbitt. So Ashley Babbitt um, retired, I think, Air Force. Or she left the Air Force before she did 20 years in the Air Force, um, and there to protest the election results. And in the midst of a bunch of people that were doing, things they shouldn't be doing, and trying to climb through a window, and rather than being tased, rather than being restrained, a police officer took it upon himself to shoot her. And so her mom apparently helps lead vigils at the Capitol building on a regular basis. And why should you be important? Or why should you be important? You are important. Why should you be interested in that story? Well, I encourage you to check out for yourself just the actual video footage. It is hard to watch anybody getting shot. You don't see blood and gore. The video quality is, it's basically cell phone. But you do see what happened. You do see her fall back. Um, if it's still posted, I remember seeing it when it was first out. But check that out. Read about her story and ask yourselves: was this a government perpetrated murder? Were there other options they could have utilized rather than shooting her in the neck? Um, you know, maybe they could have taken her in custody. Maybe she could have faced jail time. But what happened subsequently looks really bad. And by the way, that's the only murder or death as a result of confrontation that happened that day. You might remember when the news first came out about January 6th, There was a lot of speculation that I think three police officers or two police officers had died as a result of rioters. Well, it turned out to be subsequently a lie. What happened was, and there was an officer, Sicknick. You might remember that the Democrats in Congress made a really big deal about Sicknick, and they even had a memorial service for Sicknick. Turned out Sicknick died the next day or 2 days later from a stroke that he had. And we were told in the initial news reports that he had had his head bashed in, faced all sorts of trauma. Turns out none of it was true. And the guy died, unfortunately, of a stroke. And yet he was made a hero by the left in the news as a proof that the January Sixers were violent extremists. And then there was a police officer that committed suicide shortly thereafter. I can't remember if there was a third or not. But anyway, this story is not going to go away, and it'll continue to come up. The January 6th story will not go away. It'll continue to come up as the next election looms, because one of the things that we know, well, we know a few things. One is that Donald Trump is vastly in the lead of the other Republican candidates. Vivek Ramaswamy is number two right now, edging out Ron DeSantis from Florida. If you haven't checked out Vivek, I'd encourage you to. I mean, I wouldn't say I agree with everything he's saying, but he's a strong candidate. And I'd love to see him up on a debate stage because he will wipe the floor I mean, the guy is brilliant. He graduated number one in his class. Can't remember if he went to Harvard or Yale. Dude's sharp. And he started many companies. Some say he's a billionaire. Some say he's just got hundreds of millions of dollars. Guy started, from nothing and created businesses, and now is a highly successful businessman. Um, Much like Donald Trump, although Donald Trump did get a start, I think, with about 100 million from his own dad. So, but it went on to become a billionaire himself. So, anyway, people maybe to listen to would include somebody like Vivek Ramaswamy. Um, how did I get on that? Anyway, so January 6th is going to continue to be pushed forward as a narrative to downplay, if Donald Trump is the nominee, downplay um, his potential for being a good president for our country. Um, Even though, if you look at the actual footage, you had a handful of rioters that created problems and got harsher justice than they should have. And then you juxtapose that with the complete lack of justice that occurred for those that did the BLM Antifa riots. They got away with murder and billions of dollars of destruction. Anyway, that's the birthday edition of my channel. I if you're watching this far, I'll continue on because I'm waiting for my family to say I can come home anyway, so they can do the big reveal of the decorations. Um, there was a time I didn't think I was going to make 55. I've dealt with some pretty severe illness in my past. I may not even make it through the day. I don't know. I'm feeling pretty good, just a little tired. Definitely the caffeine will help. Uh, but I need to make changes to my lifestyle, and I know it. So pray with me that I can take those steps, because willpower is hard. What I tend to not put too much in the way of sugar and things like this, but probably need to cut back in coffee, which is something I came to in my later 20s. Was not a coffee drinker before that. Um, and just my eating patterns, and frankly, I just don't get enough exercise. And as you can imagine, a household with Not really 12 kids that I'm responsible for. I've got a couple that are out on their own for the most part, but they are involved in my life, and I still help them with things, and they help us. But it's a busy household that sometimes leaves little room for doing things like exercise. Although I've done it in the past, shouldn't make an excuse. I have a work from home job, so I don't really have a commute except for this last couple weeks having to work at my daughter's place because of internet. But now that should be solved. So I've got that extra time. I should be exercising. So pray that I can get back to that and maybe make some changes to how I'm eating. The other thing, and I used to marvel at this when I was a younger therapist, seeing old patients who just had like a sweet tooth and they would eat just junk, and I didn't fully understand it. But now I find myself gravitating towards wanting chocolate or ice cream at night, and that's not good. Especially on a regular basis. Occasionally, maybe not that big a deal, but um, too much in my case. Anyway, I hope you're having a great day. I'm looking forward to a great day. Take care and God bless.